Okay everyone, welcome back to part 2 of my video today on the Rotten Reverend Clinton and how I believe that she planned, organized, directed, and controlled the entire coup plot against Trump. So let's pick up where we left off. And where we left off was that on July the 24th, 2016, Robbie Mook, the campaign chair for the Rotten Reverend Clinton, claimed that Russia hacked the DNC to help Trump. Then, on September the 5th of 2016, the Rotten Reverend Clinton accuses Russia of interfering in the election. This coming on the heels of one of those Michael Isikoff articles, which is typically how it worked. Isikoff would write an article, and the Rotten Reverend Clinton, people in her campaign would comment on it, and then the FBI would use it as a supporting evidence to get warrants. September the 21st, 2016, Sidney Blumenthal passes the Shearer dossier to the State Department via Victoria Nuland and to John Kerry. So here we have Sidney Blumenthal passing the Shearer dossier for the first time into the State Department, showing that the Rotten Reverend Clinton was in fact taking now, not just trying to get her dossier into the media for the October surprise, but she's now getting freaked out because no one will run it. So now she's probably figured that she has to get it into the FBI so that it can be then covered as a story of how the FBI is investigating the dossier. And she realizes that she has to be very careful how she does this, so she decides to use her old stomping grounds at the State Department, where she knows a lot of people, has a lot of contacts, and a lot of allies. So she uses Sidney Blumenthal to pass this so-called second dossier, the Shearer dossier, to the State Department. It went to Victoria Nuland. She passed it over to John Kerry, and he, of course, dutifully passed it on to the FBI. That was September 21st of 2016. And keep in mind, at this point, they're starting to get kind of nervous. Then on September 23rd of 2016, 2 days later, Yahoo News' Michael Isikoff writes a story based on the dossier. That there may be a Trump-Russia collusion. And, of course, James Baker, of course, somehow got this information, we believe probably through Mr. Sussman, and then he leaked it to Isikoff. So that's how they would, throughout this entire process, you will see that the Rotten Reverend Clinton would constantly use one of her assets or sources to leak information to someone else so that they could do something else with it. Whether it was to put it to the FBI, the State Department, give it to someone in the media, or all of the above. They were constantly pumping and feeding this dossier information, which the Rotten Reverend Clinton, of course, was the owner of, and she was constantly pumping this garbage in every direction she possibly could through her intermediaries. So the Rotten Reverend Clinton follows within minutes of this Yahoo story by Michael Isikoff, just as she normally does, where he says on September 23rd that there may be a Trump-Russia collusion situation. At that point, the Rotten Reverend Clinton follows up within minutes with a press release touting the Isikoff story and Trump-Russia collusion and leaves a link. So she's doing the same thing the FBI would do. She would leak the information out to a reporter and then comment on it and leave a link on it, as if it was something she was just finding out about, when in fact, just was in the case of the FBI, they actually would leak the stuff to the media, then use the media report to justify what they wanted to do. In this case, well, for the FBI, it was to get warrants and investigations. For the Rotten Reverend Clinton, it was to leave links to the story to try and propagate it further. On October the 19th of 2016, the Rotten Reverend Clinton accuses Trump of being Putin's pimp, or puppet. I'm sorry, puppet. October 19th, 2016, I believe that was the first debate, the Rotten Reverend Clinton accuses Trump of being Putin's puppet. So here you can see that they're working this narrative really hard, and she does it right there. I'm sure all of you saw it in that first debate where she continues. It's not just the stuff they're leaking out to the press and everything else and pumping out through all these departments of the government and to the media. She's now taking it onto the main stage at the debates and trying to pass it and trying to press the narrative there as well. So at this point, the FBI General Counsel, James Baker, receives a dossier from David Corn of Mother Jones that advances the Trump-Russia collusion. So again, we can see it's just being passed all over the place, and we believe that and this occurred on October 31st of 2016, that Halloween article. Many of us remember that, and it now appears at this time, we're pretty sure that leak of this information to David Korn of Mother Jones came from Glenn Simpson at Fusion GPS. The Clinton campaign issues a statement on the Trump Tower meeting, citing Slate.com as their source. And this was again on Halloween, October 31st of 2016, the same day that David Korn on Mother Jones puts out this article of advancing Trump-Russia collusion. The same day the Clinton campaign issues the statement on the Trump Tower meeting, citing the Slate.com article as their source. And of course, that also was fed to them. Now, January 11th, 2017, John Podesta meets with Glenn Simpson. October 24th, 2017, the Washington Post reports that Clinton DNC paid for the dossier. So here we are, October 24th, 2017, a year after everybody's been trying to find out who paid for this dossier. And throughout that whole time, Clinton or any of her cronies or all these people who knew exactly who paid for it would never say. Finally, on October 24th, 2017, it comes out. The Washington Post reports that Clinton paid for the dossier. Then, December 7th, 2017, former State Department official Jonathan Weiner writes an op-ed in the Washington Post, and he says that Steele and Blumenthal were in contact with him about separate dossiers on Trump's ties to Russia. Of course, we know that those two dossiers came from the same sources. And, of course, Blumenthal and Scheer would have been two of the original sources, along with Simpson. And so they admit that the Steele's meeting in 2016 about the dossier, and also that he gave Cody Scheer dossier to Victoria Nuland. Steele also got a copy of the Scheer dossier from Weiner, and Steele gave that to the FBI. So here you have Jonathan Weiner really coming into play now, and the Right Reverend Clinton is using her henchmen to pass it along. So you have the so-called Scheer dossier given to Blumenthal. He goes over and he gives it to Weiner. Then Weiner goes over and gives it to Steele, and then Steele passes it on to the FBI. Then Weiner goes over and gives it to Nuland, and she passes it along the chain as well. So now the FBI is being flooded with two different, what appear to be different dossiers containing basically the same information. And that's when we were seeing those texts between Strzok and Page, when they were getting real confused about, wait a minute, this is not the same as the other one. This dossier is not this. We got this. So there were literally 4 or 5 different versions of the dossier floating around, being pumped into the FBI, and they were trying to figure out where they were all coming from. And they were all coming from the same source. The Rotten Reverend and her insiders. June 29th of 2018, The Last Refuge at Conservative Treehouse reports that Loretta Lynch was funneling intelligence information on the Clinton server investigation to Clinton aide Maria Renteria. Why is this important? This is important because it shows us another clear connection where we actually have the Department of Justice, Loretta Lynch, being actively involved in funneling information, classified information, to the Clinton, Hillary Clinton, basically, via a third party, this being one of Clinton's campaign aides, in this case, Maria Renteria. August 8th of 2018, newly released FBI documents reveal that Senator Magoo, that would be Senator McCain for those of you new to this channel, Senator Magoo illegally fed classified intelligence to Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele to set up the Trump Tower meeting, and the top FBI brass helped to plot the scheme. Senator Magoo illegally fed classified intelligence to Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele to set up the Trump Tower meeting, and the top FBI brass helped plot this scheme. Then we learn from Jeff Carlson at marketswork.com that on September 1st of 2018, we learned that Edward Lieberman, a friend of the Clintons, met with Glenn Simpson and possibly Veselnitskaya, the Russian lawyer, and had dinner on the very night of the Trump Tower meeting. Then we have the Gateway Pundit reporting that Alexandria Chalupa admitted that she told the Clinton campaign about Manafort working for Yanukovych going back as early as March of 2016. October 5th of 2018, we have Catherine Herridge of Fox News reporting that James Baker, the general counsel for the FBI, Comey's lawyer, says that Michael Sussman was someone he met with and that he received info from on the dossier and on the Trump server that was in Trump Tower. Sussman, of course, is the former DOJ official who is now working for Perkins Coie as an attorney representing the Rotten Reverend Clinton campaign. So here you have James Baker saying that it was Michael Sussman, Hillary's lawyer, who was the person who came to him and gave him information on both the supposed Trump Tower server as well as dossier information. We would be talking about the Shearer dossier information. And so if Sussman is giving it personally to James Baker, the general counsel of the FBI. So here we can see they're directly, the Rotten Reverend Clinton campaign is now, and Reverend Clinton is now using her lawyer to personally pass this information directly to the general counsel of the FBI, James Baker, who would then hand it over to Comey. So now they're getting so desperate, they're not even trying to pretend anymore. I mean, they're just going directly to the sources. December 8th of 2018, Papagalopoulos and his wife do an interview with Tracy Beans. And Papagalopoulos' wife tells Tracy that Misford knew the Rotten Reverend Clinton very well and that they had dinner together at least on one occasion she knows of for sure, which occurred back in 2011. And this is the first time we get a direct link from the Rotten Reverend Clinton to Joseph Mifsud. December of 2018, Christopher Steele reveals in a deposition in a civil suit filed against him by Alpha Bank that he gave information to Strobe Talbot. Strobe Talbot is a longtime friend of the Clintons. Talbot also served in Bill Clinton's administration. And Talbot's brother is, or Talbot's brother-in-law, Talbot's brother-in-law is Cody Shearer. December 17th, 2018, Christopher Steele admits in his deposition that he was hired by the Rotten Reverend Clinton and the DNC via Perkins Coie to gather information that would provide evidence for Perkins Coie to challenge the validity of the election in court. December 28th of 2018, Devin Nunes tells Fox that Hillary Clinton personally hired Michael Isikoff at the same time that Perkins Coie was hired to contract Fusion GPS. Isikoff's articles, along with Fusion GPS interactions with the FBI, are part of the circular reporting that was used to get the FISA warrants on Carter Page and on the Trump team. January the 11th of 2019, Jeff Carlson reveals that Gene Camp of Indiana University professor, and also a Hillary Clinton supporter, was the person that tipped off the FBI to the server in Trump Tower that was being pinged by Alpha Bank. This information was used to get the warrant on Trump Tower. The information turned out to be bogus. Michael Sussman was the person who gave the information directly to, again, General Counsel James Baker personally. So this Gene Camp, a Hillary supporter who has a little small IT business on the side, is conducting surveillance for some reason on Trump's server at Trump Tower. She gets this pinging coming from Alpha Bank. She takes that information to the Right Reverend Clinton, who gives it to her attorney Michael Sussman, and Sussman walks it in again directly to General Counsel James Baker at the FBI. January 23rd, 2019, John Solomon writes in thehill.com that between July and October of 2016, Hillary Clinton connected lawyers, emissaries, and apologists, made more than a half dozen overtures to U.S. officials, each tapping a political connection to get suspect evidence into the FBI counterintelligence into the agent's hands, according to internal documents and testimonies that he has conducted. So here we are, January 23rd, 2019, John Solomon finally realizing what I realized a long time ago, that the Right Reverend Clinton was using assets, and he describes them as connected lawyers, emissaries, and apologists, going directly to FBI counterintelligence agents, or in some of these cases going directly to, using the Hillary's lawyer, Mr. Sussman, going directly to Baker, the general counsel, who would then pass it to Comey, who would likely pass it on down to Strzok and McCabe, who were working the counterintelligence operation. So again, this is the Right Reverend Clinton pipelining every bit of this information, not just into the media, but using State Department and her personal sources to pipeline it to Steele, to pipeline it to media sources, to pipeline it to the FBI, the State Department, anyone and everyone. The Right Reverend Clinton was planning, directing, organizing, and controlling this entire operation, as I've said. February 6th of 2019, multiple media reports that Rinat Akhmetshan, who attended the Trump Tower meeting, was working for Confusion GPS at the time of the Trump Tower meeting. Akhmetshan is a friend of the Clintons, and he had dinner and drinks with a close friend of the Clintons on the day of the Tower meeting. Akhmetshan was also present at the meeting in Nova Scotia, where Senator McCain, learned of the dossier from Sir Andrew Wood. Akhmetshan told Trump Jr. at the Trump Tower meeting that he felt Trump had no chance of winning the election. And if it's true that Akhmetshan told Trump Jr. that he didn't think Trump had any chance of winning the election, then why would Akhmetshan and all these players waste their time going to the Trump Tower meeting trying to get Trump to change the Magnitsky Act when he became president if they felt that he had no chance of becoming president? Well, the very good answer for that is because they weren't there for any of that. They were only there just to be there, just to have the meeting, because it was a setup by obviously multiple players in this setup: the FBI, Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS, the Right Reverend Clinton, and Senator Magoo, all part of setting up the Trump Tower meeting using their boy Akhmetshan, Glenn Simpson, and they brought in a new actor, in this case the Russian lawyer Maria Vetselnitskaya, and it's a whole story unto itself about how she was allowed in the country when she had previously been banned. She also went and visited Senator McCain while she was in town. She took a photo from his office, and she received some sort of a contribution to something from Senator McCain. March 6th of 2019, Chuck Ross reports that Glenn Simpson communicated often with Jonathan Weiner. Weiner was also the anonymous source for Isikoff on quite a few of his articles. And David Corn as well. And these were some of the earliest stories that were being written about the Trump-Russia collusion back in the fall of 2016. It was mainly these articles coming out by Isikoff and David Corn, and a couple by David Ignatius. And, of course, obviously, Isikoff is on the Clinton payroll, working for them. David Corn is a close friend of Glenn Simpson, so if Simpson was passing this stuff to him, and of course Ignatius was also getting this information fed to him, not sure who was doing that, possibly Bruce Orr. And this was all occurring back in the very early days of the first reports of Trump-Russia collusion. March 27th of 2019, Michael Goodwin writes an article that the dossier was supposed to be Hillary's October surprise, but no one would publish it because Steele's sources could not be verified. March 29th of 2019, Alexandria Chalupa is outed as a source for Michael Isikoff. John Solomon, March 31st, 2019, tells Fox that Hillary Clinton had a full-time researcher at the Ukrainian embassy in D.C. Clinton had set up a receiving post to get dirt on Trump in the spring of 2016. Spring of 2016. Think about that. The Right Reverend Clinton had already set up a receiving post with the Ukrainian embassy in D.C. to get dirt on Trump in the spring of 2016 using her paid operative, Alexandria Chalupa. March 31st, 2019, Politico reports that Andrei Telesinko admits to working in the Ukraine embassy to help Hillary's researcher to find connections between Trump, Manafort, and Russia. Telesinko says that they were coordinating an investigation with the Clinton campaign on Manafort and were trying to keep it quiet. May 10th of 2019, John Solomon reveals that it was Jonathan Weiner, former State Department official and friend of the Right Reverend Clinton, that set up the meeting between Christopher Steele and Kathleen Kvalik. Kvalik worked for HRC's State Department. The Right Reverend Clinton had promoted Kvalik during her tenure as Secretary of State. Kvalik also met 2 times with FBI officials before her meeting with Steele on September 29th and 30th of 2016, when things were desperate. New information came out on May 17th of 2019. It shows that Steele and his partner Chris Burrows worked with Stefan Halper in the past. Burrows has known Joseph Mifsud since 2010. Baumgartner and Halper worked for Hackloot, the other private intelligence firm in London. Glenn Simpson and his wife Mary Jacoby worked with Stefan Halper at the Wall Street Journal. Mary Jacoby worked with Sidney Blumenthal at Salon.com in 2014. And Sidney Blumenthal, worked with Simpson and Jonathan Weiner. There you go, my friends. All these players, all connected. Remember, this is the important thing to remember. These people are all totally interconnected. Every single one of them, they know each other, have known each other for a long time, have worked together in the past, and every single damn one of them either working for and being paid by the Rotten Reverend Clinton or working for someone who was working for the Rotten Reverend Clinton. All roads lead to the Rotten Reverend Clinton. And I believe when we get to the bottom of this stinking barrel of fish, if Durham and Barr are successful at getting the truth, getting to the bottom of it, it's all going to lead right back to the Rotten Reverend Clinton. She was pipelining. She paid for this entire damn thing. She bankrolled it. She's the one who pushed it. She is the one who ultimately would have been the benefactor of it. She was behind the whole damn thing. And still is. May 19th, 2019, Larry Johnson, former CIA official, claims that Hillary Clinton paid Alexander Down the Hatch Downer directly via Hackloot, the private intelligence firm in London. May 27th, 2019, the Gateway Pundit reports that the Rotten Reverend Clinton took the Trump Tower information she got from Gene Kemp and gave it to Sussman, who then gave it to Baker. She then passed it on to Fusion GPS, who then gave the story to Salon.com, and they published it, and Hillary sent out a tweet with the link. I'm telling you, the Rotten Reverend was mighty, mighty busy, has been very, very busy. She was the one sitting back, directing, controlling, organizing this entire plot. She is the one, just about everybody here who does anything or takes any action, pushing the dossiers, pushing news stories, doing it all, every single one of them was prompted by the rotten Reverend Clinton or someone on her payroll. Excuse me. June 2017, June 17th, 2019, Natalia Veselnitskaya tells NBC News that it was Glenn Simpson that provided her with the dirt that she was supposed to give the Trump team at the Trump Tower meeting, but it never really happened. June the 18th of 2019, Papagalopoulos tweets that Alexander Down the Hatch Downer was Clinton's errand boy. Now, let's take a look at those people who were the dominant players in the dossier. Both the Steele and the so-called Steele and Scheer dossier, which I contend were one and the same. It was the same information coming from the same people. The rotten Reverend, Glenn Simpson, his wife Mary Jacoby, with their little buddy Nellie Orr, and her friend over in London, Mr. Baumgartner, along with Scheer and Blumenthal, and possibly Slick Willie. And there's pretty much the people who wrote the dossier. There's your sources. And all these sources that Steele says were sources he was getting that was coming to him, it was all being pipelined from associates of the rotten Reverend Clinton. And he's not so stupid that he doesn't know that. And that's why he's in a world of hurt. That's why he has to keep saying, well, I had these Russian sources. I had these Russian sources. He didn't have any Russian sources. The Russians wouldn't talk to him. And anyone, think about it. The Russians have blackmail material on a president, on a potential president, and eventually the president. And a couple of people who may have somehow gotten access to this highly, highly sensitive information give it to some guy like Christopher Steele, who's looking to do some opposition research. I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. First of all, these intelligence officials, if they were even real, would have known that if they were to disclose such sensitive information, it wouldn't have taken Putin 15 minutes to figure out the small group of people who would have had access to that type of closely held, seriously highly top secretive information. It wouldn't have taken Putin long to drag every damn one of those guys in. There probably wouldn't have been more than a dozen or so who would have had that kind of information, the highest levels of his intelligence agencies. That's who it would have been. These guys that Steele keeps mentioning, these guys are not in Putin's government. They're not in the Kremlin. They haven't been around in the official government positions, for one of them for 20 years, the other one for I think somewhere around 10 years. But they weren't in positions that they ever even would have gotten close or gotten a sniff to this type of information. But had they gotten a sniff of this information and they had passed it along to some character like Mifsud or Christopher Steele, Putin would have figured that out very quickly, and they would have been deader than a hammer, and they know it. You don't have former KGB officials or former Putin intelligence, military intelligence people out there passing highly top secret information from the Russian government, from Putin's government out there, and expecting that they're going to live to see the sunrise the following morning. So this entire reason for this narrative is crazy. There were no people within Putin's government, within his intelligence agencies, that were passing information out to Christopher Steele, Mifsud, or anyone else. And this information didn't come from Russians. It was cooked up in Hillary's kitchen, home cooked, with Sidney Blumenthal, Cody Scheer, Podesta, Glenn Simpson, Nellie Orr, and Baumgartner. And they used their close associates and contacts, Mifsud, who knows Clinton, Halper, which clearly has connections to Fusion GPS and all these other characters we just went through, and of course Downer, which has a very close relationship, good friends of the Clintons, likely was called in personally by the Clintons to pull off this deal, as was reported by Larry Johnson. So we have all these people all connected to the rotten Reverend Clinton. As we just went through, they're all connected to her. She would have been the person ultimately who owned the dossier information and controlled the dossier information. She was in control of where that information went, and as we now know, it went everywhere. She pumped it through the State Department using Jonathan Weiner, Sidney Blumenthal, Cody Shearer. In fact, we just learned less than 2 weeks ago from Devin Nunes that Cody Shearer and Sidney Blumenthal eventually were making personal trips over to the State Department. At first, they didn't want to use those two guys because everybody knows who they are and they're henchmen and everybody knows it. They're hacks. But eventually, they just started sending Cody Shearer and Blumenthal personally over to the State Department, giving this information to people. So you have CrowdStrike connected to the Rotten Reverend Clinton, DNC, and all her acolytes. You have Confusion GPS, Steele, Downer, Misfit, and Helper. You have these governments, Ukraine, UK, Australia, and Italy. All Clinton assets were associates of the Rotten Reverend Clinton. All roads lead back to the Rotten Reverend Clinton. No matter how you look at this thing, you can start wherever you want in this investigation. You can start with Operation Crossfire Hurricane and go backwards. You can start with the Carter Page FISA warrants and go backwards. You can start with the stuff that was happening in the Ukraine, and you can follow where that leads. You can look at the stuff that was happening in the UK, look who those players were, and look who they're connected to. All throughout, as you go through this entire Spygate fiasco, you will always find when you follow the lead to where it eventually ends up, and you follow the money, and you follow the people, they always end up right at the footsteps of the Rotten Reverend Clinton. This was a Rotten Reverend Clinton operation. She planned, organized, directed, and controlled the whole damn thing. And I do believe when we get to the bottom of this, if we do get to the bottom, if Barr and Durham do get to the bottom of it, this is what we are going to learn. And all these players, Brennan, Comey, Clapper, Lynch, they were all, in a sense, obligated to use this information, knowing damn good and well where it was coming from, knowing damn good and well it was garbage. But they had a big problem because they had engaged in a lot of illegal activities to try to stop Trump. And once that did not work, then they had a big problem because now they had to cover up the crime. And so it became the only option they had to take these extraordinary risks to try to get Trump out of office, to get Trump before he could get them. And also, you probably have the fact that they wanted to keep those jobs. Comey wanted to continue being FBI director. Clapper didn't want to get knocked out of DNI. And of course, Brennan, Mr. Potato Head, wanted to stay on as CIA director. They didn't want to have to leave their jobs. And they were planning on Hillary Clinton coming in, and they would just stay in their positions. But with Trump, nope, they're out the door. And all their dirty laundry would eventually be aired out. Criminal dirty laundry, I might add. So there you go. Those are the motivations of all the people who were involved and why they were motivated. But they were all, the whole thing was set into motion, and the whole thing was being pushed. As you can see, the push was coming from the Rotten Reverend Clinton. She was there as the central player pushing all this information into all the various pipelines it was going through. And that's exactly the way it looks when you look at the facts. And I think that's what we'll find when we get to the end. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget the Dumbass of the Week. Please put your comments, your votes on the first video, video 1. And I'll be tallying those up and we'll have a winner on Monday. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you guys. Bye.